Hello, everyone. Welcome back to New Age Sports, where we seek to drive engagement, the new age of engagement between athletes and their fans. Today, I have Jared here with me. I'm Tanner. We're going to be looking at all the bowl games on this year's slate and give you our pick for each of them. We're also going to have our Instagram page has live voted on these bowl games as well, so we'll kind of compare and contrast and see what the fans are thinking. But hey, Jared, how's it going?
Hey Tanner, it's good to be with you again.
All right. Well, we'll just go ahead and get rolling then, not waste everyone's time. So, starting out, because you're going to be chronological order. So, first bowl game of the bowl season here with the Bahamas Bowl. Bowl game I always wish that I could have gone to, yet it always seems to be kind of some bottom dwelling teams. So, we have a couple of interesting teams here. As you can see, our fans are thinking the Red Hawks have got it from Miami, Ohio. I personally have UAB and Jared has Miami, so I'll let Jared speak to a little bit about Miami.
All right, on Miami, this is very much just a homer pick for me. There wasn't a whole lot of football expertise going into this one. Uh, they've had another pretty average year. Um, this Miami program is always kind of up and down. Uh, Interesting place geographically to recruit football players to as well. Kind of in the middle of nowhere down in Southwest Ohio. So this team spread, I think, on this game is 10.5. I definitely like them on that number, but UAB is going to be a tough test for them. But I'm taking them anyway. Go Red Hawks.
Yeah, well, the New Age Sports, the New Age College Football Instagram page actually agrees with you. So 60% of our fans that voted there say they've got Miami, Ohio as well. UAB, from my perspective, you've got the top rushing running back in all of college football there with Dwayne McBride. Actually was
1,700 yards.
Yep, he's a stud. So personally, just looking at Miami, Ohio, how they stack up on defense, numbers wise, they're kind of middle of the pack against the run, but they haven't seen anybody like this. So I just don't see them being able to withstand that rushing attack of UAB. Anyways, we'll go ahead and get into our next bowl game. You've got the Duluth Trading Cure Bowl. So Jared and I both have UTSA in this one, the Conference USA champions for the first time this year. But our Instagram followers actually have put Troy forward with 67% of the vote going towards them. Jared, anything you've seen from UTSA that you wanted to comment on?
I think just UTSA in general as a program has been building the last few years. They had a decent year well. I just kind of like where that program's headed. They're headed in the right direction, I think. So we'll see if they. I think they can get it done against Troy in this bowl game this year.
Yeah, so Troy has had some success over the last 5 or 6 years. I know for sure. They've been competing in the Sun Belt. UTSA, a little bit newer of a program in the FBS college football, but over the last couple of years have really showed out. And a lot of it has to do with the guy in the big picture there, number 0, Frank Harris. He's a 6th-year quarterback because of some eligibility stuff. He's actually coming back for a 7th year next year. So, I mean, you've got Grandpa over there, but he slings that thing. He's got some high-powered receivers, foremost being Zachary Franklin. But yeah, he likes to put the ball downfield. He gets it out early and often. Troy does have a strong defense, so it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out between the two of them. And then they've got a pretty strong running game as well at Troy with a young guy there, Toten the Rock and Kamani Vidal. But yeah, this should shape up to be a pretty good game. Again, another pretty cool place to play, Orlando, Florida.
It's an early start. Good early start.
Yeah.
Good early game.
Yeah, and Duluth Trading Company, right? They've got the lumberjack underwear up there. So
great underwear.
Yeah. Well, anyways, yeah. So tune into this game if you get a chance. It should be a good one, a good offense, strong offense versus strong defense matchup.
A lot of grandpas playing quarterback in college football this year.
Yeah, there are. I don't think anybody's got Frank here, especially next year when he goes into year number 7. But yeah, he gives Stetson Bennett a run for his money. So next we've got the Wasabi Fenway Bowl, and if anyone out there watching live can let me know what this company Wasabi does because I've never heard of it. But yeah, this is the game that they play in the Fenway Stadium over there where the Red Sox play, and you've got Cincinnati versus Louisville. Clean sweep here from Jared, myself, and the Instagram picking Cincinnati in this one. Obviously, they were a college football playoff team last year, so coming down to the Fenway Bowl is a big shift, as well as having Luke Fickell, their head coach for the last many years, that's taken them to prominence on the national stage, heading over to Wisconsin. Jared, I know he's another person you're familiar with, being an Ohio State fan. So, what do you think about Fickell?
I mean, Fickell got this program back last year to new heights, as far as, honestly, probably one of the best Cincinnati teams ever. They were rolling last year, lost a lot from that team coming into this year. So pretty impressive, actually, to turn around and have another pretty solid year. Not a great year to the standard that Fickell set, but it's definitely an acceptable year. Cincinnati fans love Luke Fickell over there, and he did a great job recruiting in the area too, in Ohio and Kentucky, and just that general region of the country. He pulled a lot of kids from there. But Cincinnati's interim head coach, Kerry Combs, is a Cincinnati born and raised guy. He'll have this team ready to play. Players love playing from him, all accounts, from his time as a DB coach. Several different places. Most recently, it was the DC at Ohio State. That didn't go as well, but players love him, NFL and college guys. So I think he'll have this team ready to play.
Yeah, and mention that interim coach there. They actually have already hired their replacement, and funny enough, it's coming from Louisville. So Louisville's head coach Scott Satterfield was, with Cincinnati moving into the Big 12 next year, it's sort of a lateral move over to another Power 5 team. I know there was murmurs that he wasn't super happy with the support that he was getting. He brought in actually a top 20 recruiting class, was scheduled to come in this season. We'll see what happens now that he's on the way out, if he takes any of those cats with him to Cincinnati as they join the Big 12. But this definitely has the makings of being sort of an awkward encounter.
And this is him coming back to Cincinnati, correct?
Yeah, so I think he is a local as well. So it's one of those sort
previously
of like
coached there. I believe.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll be fun to see. Louisville's going to have Deion Branch, who's an alumni. It's kind of doing the Jeff Saturday Indianapolis Colts route. It will only be for the bowl game, but I'm not sure if Louisville's announced their new head coach. I don't believe so.
I saw today, actually, Jeff Brom is finalizing his contract to come home, and I think that was an obvious pick for them. Interesting for him to leave Purdue. For him, I would imagine that's a pretty lateral move from where he's got this Purdue program at right now, playing in a Big Ten championship game this year. But he is a Louisville guy, so that connection makes sense.
Yeah, and you have to imagine that Louisville will be a little bit less difficult to navigate as we enter into a 12-team playoff era, right? And not having to go up against Michigan, Ohio State, some of those other blue bloods in the Big Ten, whereas in the ACC recently it's seemingly been Clemson and everyone else, 2 steps below. But so that'll be interesting to see how that coaching triangle shakes out. But yeah, again, I like Cincinnati in this game. Louisville had a lot of issues, especially like we were just mentioning, coaching turnover and things like that. They do have a strong linebacker core led by Yazir Abdullah, but Cincinnati has a strong linebacker core of their own led by Ivan Pace Jr. So will be fun to watch, especially if you're a fan of defense. If you're a linebacker enthusiast, check this game out. It'll be a cool place to play too down there in Fenway Park in Boston. All right, our next one, you've got another clean sweep here, but with a pretty tight margin there from Instagram. So 60% are taking Oregon State, with 40% taking Florida. Florida is one of those teams that started the season pretty hot. They had that tight game with Utah that they ended up coming out on top, and Utah was a top-ranked team coming into the season. A big thing that's going to be working against them in this one is that their quarterback, Anthony Richardson, top talent in all of college football, is declared for the draft and won't be playing with the team. On top of that, they've actually also lost their backup quarterback. He was dismissed from the team a short time ago for some you can look up why he was dismissed if you'd like. I won't repeat it here.
Activities.
Yeah, nothing to make light of, but yeah, definitely not something you see every day in college football. Um, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see who they roll out there at quarterback. Definitely not going to be anyone who's had significant snaps this season. And then on top of that, you've got Oregon State who's humming. I mean, they've played at a high level all season long.
Yeah, this one is a game where I think picking Florida would be very, very disrespectful to an Oregon State team that's had a really solid year and seems to be building. Um, but this Florida team, there's a lot of talent on that roster, and there is always going to be a lot of talent on a Florida Gators roster. But without their top two quarterbacks, it's just going to be really tough, I think, for them to get this win. And then, side note, you made me think of that with those two quarterbacks out. I know you've been looking at the transfer portal for these quarterbacks. Florida's got to look like a pretty promising spot now with the top two guys out of the way at Florida.
Yeah, definitely, and they've been linked to a handful of folks as well. I'm not sure what they have coming in the way of recruiting classes, but yeah, I know that Sam Hartman's been one of the names that's been consistently tagged to Florida, especially now with Anthony Richardson heading off to the NFL. I think you'll start to see more of that churn and those headlines tracking. The last couple notes on Oregon State, like I mentioned before, they're not a historically great team, so having the opportunity here to get to a 10-win season would be huge for them. And then it's always fun for me seeing some of the other Power Five conferences star running backs get a chance to go up against a front seven from an SEC team. Damian Martinez over there at Oregon State's had a great uh, early career. He's still got a long way to go there at Oregon State, but it'll be fun to watch how he can stack up against the big dogs, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that Florida defense. I watched the Florida State game, and nobody really wanted to play a ton of defense that game, but there's some absolute freaks up front for that Florida defense front seven. They have some dudes that are very quick and will pop off the screen when you're sitting there watching.
Yeah, they always seem to, and it survived multiple coaching staffs too. It must just be something in the water down there in Florida, but the recruits that they get from the state of Florida, yeah, they get some genetic freaks out there. But anyways, moving on. So we've got the mouthful of a bowl game, the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl presented by Stifle. And I have to be honest, I couldn't tell you what Stifle is. I do know who Jimmy Kimmel is, so we're 50-50 on that one. But this should be an interesting game. A couple teams that like to air the ball out. We've got a clean sweep of Fresno State picks. Some of that might have to do with our Mountain West allegiance, being that I am an Air Force grad and running New Age Sports. Some of my network, I guess, leans a little bit Mountain West, but this one definitely has the makings of being a really good game.
Yeah, I like Fresno over this year and the last couple of years. They've been a really physical football team, and from some personal experience, I know Mike Leach is gone, so it's not exactly the same build for this Washington State team, but that physicality from Fresno, I really like that in this game, and I think they can take advantage of Washington State in that category.
Yeah, you mentioned the physicality of Fresno. Just watching them in the eye test, right? You watch some of their games. They won the Mountain West this year for the first time in quite a while, I think since back in the Derek Carr days, if anybody can remember back to then. But yeah, Jake Hayner's been a starter there for a few years now. He's gotten a lot of history behind him, a lot of legacy built there at Fresno. Potentially looking at see where he ends up. He may be a guy that enters the draft this year and one of those late round quarterbacks. The other guy we've got highlighted here in the middle, that's Jalen Moreno Cropper. But these guys, I mean, you watch Fresno State play, and they just don't seem like Mountain West recruits. They look like they belong somewhere bigger. I don't know if that speaks to the coaching staff, which I think has now moved on, that would have recruited those two. But yeah, super physical. From Washington State's perspective, you kind of hinted to it earlier. Ever since Mike Leach left, and unfortunately he passed away this week. So condolences to his family and all of those involved at the programs he was at, most notably Mississippi State recently. But yeah, they've had a little bit of a adjustment period. I think they're starting to move in the right direction here. They actually picked up Cameron Ward, this quarterback, who's pictured here. He's a phenomenal talent. He's a transfer from Incarnate Word, where he like lit the world on fire down there in Texas and FCS football. So getting him up to play at a high level, and he put up numbers this year too. So I mean, he threw for almost 3,100
3,100
yards.
yards. Yep.
Yes, and only 8 picks. So really promising future for him. A lot of people thought he may come out for the draft this year. He says he's going to come back for one more to Pullman. So we'll be excited to see him take on Jake Haener and have kind of a quarterback battle here. But then also in the future will be fun to watch.
Yeah, Jake Haener's only thrown 3 interceptions this year, so they take care of the ball over there at Fresno. I think it's going to play big in this game with a 1,000-yard plus running back and a 1,000-yard plus receiver. I think they're going to get it done.
Yep. All right. Moving on to one of the less stellar locations for a bowl game. You've got Mobile, Alabama, and the Lending Tree Bowl. If you had, I can't imagine anyone having any reason to watch this game. You've got Southern Miss, who finished 6-6, so all credit to them being bowl eligible. But you've also got Rice, who finished 5-7 and is in a bowl game based on their academic prestige. That being that there wasn't enough 6-win teams in college football this year. Well, apart from, I will say, there's some controversy attached. So Army actually finished 6-6 this season. However, they did not have enough FBS wins to qualify. So really scraping the bottom of the barrel here to get Rice in here at 5-7 and taking on Southern Miss, who, to be honest, could have easily been 5-7 themselves. So, if anyone's local to the Mobile area and wants to go check this game out,
Frank Gore Jr., you got him 1,000-yard back this year.
Yeah, so Frank Gore Jr. is a player to watch in this one. Rice has a couple of interesting talents, actually a couple legacies here. So you've got Gabe Taylor as well, who's a defensive back for Rice, and then he's related to Sean Taylor of the Washington Redskins at the time, but obviously a legendary player that we lost too soon. There's your one reason to watch this bowl game. If anybody wants to check out the legacy guys going at each other from each.
Southern Miss's quarterback has thrown more interceptions than touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
Both under. He's thrown eight touchdowns, 8 touchdowns to 9 interceptions.
Yeah,
and that's just not going to get it done.
So if any of our fans out there tune into the Lending Tree Bowl, let us know how it goes, because I have to admit that I'm probably going to miss this one.
Yeah, I'm going to have to pass on that one, I think.
Another less than stellar location to play a bowl game. Luckily, neither of these two teams had to go too far, though. You've got SMU taking on BYU in the New Mexico Bowl. Jared and I are split on this one, and Instagram agrees with Jared, saying BYU by 78%. So me personally, I haven't seen a whole lot from BYU. They've been a little underwhelming, but happy to hear why you think they can take down the Mustangs.
Yeah, I mean, BYU, their quarterback is a yards and touchdowns machine. He's got 31 touchdowns this year with only 6 interceptions. And then the receiver, Rice, has 1,300 receiving yards. Or, no, that's the wrong team. My apologies there. I got my sheets mixed up.
Lines crossed. Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, Rashee Rice, the receiver from SMU. He's kind of a fringe day one pick in the NFL draft, potentially a first rounder, seeing how he tests. But he has actually opted out of the bowl game. So that'll be 1 point in favor of BYU, is that Tanner Mordecai and SMU are going to be missing their top receiver and 1,000-yard receiver. Jaron Hall over there at BYU, though, their quarterback and kind of the lifeblood of their team, he's dealing with an injury, and he hopes to get back, but it's uncertain at this time, this far out, as whether or not he's going to be able to play in the game.
Yeah, it still has a couple weeks to get back. So I think maybe if he is not playing, that might probably change my pick here. But there's a lot of bowl games these days, and BYU, I'm gonna stick behind the Cougs.
Yeah, it's total mystery too as far as what happens if Jaron Hall isn't able to make it back. On their roster, they do not have a single quarterback who's completed a pass other than Jaron Hall. So, like I said, the whole offense there at BYU begins and ends with him. Honestly, if I had to provide my analysis on this one, these are both some teams that like to let the ball fly. SMU, again, I mentioned missing their top receiver, but it's not going to change the way they play at all. They're going to keep slinging it. I think what this game is going to come down to is can anyone establish the run game? And if one of these teams can do that better than the other, I think you'll see that team come out on top.
Gonna have some competing blue uniforms in this game too.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like the uniforms for both of these teams. These color combos are typically pretty good.
yeah. So definitely not a place to go check out this game live in Albuquerque, but it should be a good one to catch on TV.
Albuquerque, from experience, they're playing that at New Mexico's field.
Yeah.
I would
Well,
assume it's the
yeah,
only
I
thing there.
believe so.
Hardest. Maybe they've got new turf since we played there my senior year, so 3 years ago. The hardest field. I thought I was walking on the concrete. It was physically that hard. In Albuquerque, it's just not good.
Yeah, not a
Just
lot to
spend a
see,
week
not a lot
of
to do.
practice. Yeah, I could see both of those teams getting to town later than normal.
All right, moving on to our next one. We've got the Frisco Bowl, which is kind of an interesting matchup here. You have Boise State, who ended up finishing as the runner-up in the Mountain West Conference. They lost to Fresno, who we talked about a little bit earlier, but still a really promising, young, talented team. And then North Texas, another team that played in the Conference USA championship game and got edged out by UTSA. So two pretty talented, skilled teams. The ball just didn't fall their way in that conference championship game, but should be a good matchup.
Yeah, I think I really like Boise here. Coming out of the Mountain West, I know Conference USA has been getting better, but Boise, they're just at this point a stellar Group of Five program, year in and year out. And honestly, their finish this year was kind of surprising as far as they actually ended up having a pretty solid season because early on in the year, just being connected in the Mountain West a little bit like we are, you would have thought the sky was falling down early in the year in Boise with the Bachmeyer situation and ended up transferring out. And then the team, some alumni bashing him for giving up on the team. You would have thought the whole world was coming to an end with an early loss in the season for Boise. They weren't used to that start, but they ended up turning it around, and as usual, they're a rock solid team coming out of the Mountain West.
Yeah, and just while you mentioned the Conference USA improving, um, yeah, they have. You've got some really good teams coming out of the Conference USA. Unfortunately for the conference, but maybe good for college football. A lot of those teams are actually headed out. This is their last year in the Conference USA. So you've got Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Rice, UAB, and UTSA all headed to the American Conference next year. So it'll be fun to watch them try to replace Central Florida, Cincy, and Houston, who are all off to the Big 12. So a lot of shakeups there in the Group of Five, and then coming into the Big 12, and then a few, obviously, the big ones: Oklahoma, Texas to the SEC, USC, UCLA to the Big 10. But yeah, to stay on Boise and North Texas, you've got a couple of teams here. Boise State, they're coming up against a team that's a little bit weak on the rushing game. They do have a really strong Mike linebacker there, KD Davis, who's pictured. I think he's probably their all-time leading tackler for a career, but he's been putting up big numbers there for a few years. But as a whole, the defense struggles with the run, and that's something that Boise State's going to be all over, right? They've got a really strong running back in George Filani, and then their quarterback, Taylon Green, is a strong dual threat. He's a young guy too, but he's got a lot longer to go in college football. He can throw the ball, but he likes to run it as well. So that'll be something that they're going to look to exploit, is get that run game going early and then see if they can beat him over the top a few times too with Taylon Green throwing the rock.
Yeah, Filani's been doing it now for a couple years. So
yeah, their head coach, Andy Avalos there at Boise State. It seems like they're constantly successful. They're always making new hires. You had Brian Harsin there and Chris Peterson not long before him. But this is actually Andy Avalos' first season as head coach, and this is his first opportunity for a 10-win season as head coach at Boise. So that's going to be something that they're going to want to do for their coach.
Yeah, they've built a culture now that is kind of withstanding our coach, not dependent on the coach, which is impressive and a hard thing to do. I will say, do have to. I don't know what North Texas home game attendance looks like, but this should be pretty much a home game for them in comparison to Boise. But Boise will have some fans that travel down to Frisco. They travel, I mean, as far as group of five teams go, they travel fairly well.
Yep. So definitely check this one out if you have a chance. It should be a good matchup. Another one. This one, depending on the time of year, maybe Myrtle Beach not the best place to be hanging out in December, but definitely take that over Albuquerque if you ask me.
Play mini golf
Yeah, they
capital
got
of the
all type of
world.
stuff. Go-kart racing. They've got it all out in Myrtle Beach. So,
It's some of those big dogs from the O lines on these teams in a go kart. That's what I
oh
need to
yeah,
see.
yep. So, and this one you've got an interesting matchup. You've got Marshall, who played to a lot of fanfare early this year when they knocked off Notre Dame early in the season. Unexpected, obviously, reminiscent of App State taking down Michigan a few years back. I guess that's been quite a while now, but a lot of those same feelings coming from that game. And then you've got Connecticut, who's reemerging as a formidable team. They're under the leadership of Jim Mora, who's got some experience coaching college football teams as well as NFL teams. But Jared, what do you think about this matchup?
For me personally, if you look at UConn's schedule, playing an independent schedule, they've got some pretty solid wins, but also kind of taking the Army route, considering they did play Army as well this year and lost by 2 scores. Um, they just they just can't quite. I just don't think they're quite there yet, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They've made a big improvement to get back into a bowl game and be relevant. To some extent, we're not there yet, but I just think Marshall's going to be the more prepared as far as the actual players, not necessarily the coaches getting them prepared, but they've been in moments before, and they're more cohesive and ready for the moment a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, and I agree, and we both picked Marshall on this one, and you see the Instagram fans jumped in on Marshall as well, 70% saying that they think the Thundering Herd have got this one in the bag. So again, UConn, Marshall's tough against the run. UConn can't throw the ball, so it's going to be really tough for them to overcome. There's a lot of things working against them, primarily which I think is just some of that lack of success over the last few years. This is their first time being bowl eligible since 2015. Last season, they're coming off a 1-11 finish. So just to get to 6-6, I think they're all fairly satisfied and happy with the outcome of this season. Whereas I think Marshall still probably feels like they have a little bit to prove after that strong start. Mentioned beating Notre Dame early on, but then they ended up finishing only 8 wins. There's star running back there at Marshall, Kalen Laybourne. He's at 1,400 yards rushing this season. They're going to look to pound the rock against UConn. UConn's giving up 387 yards per game on defense. So, again, I think it's a thing of Connecticut on the rise. I just don't think they're there yet to compete with a team like Marshall.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, Darren.
Moving on to the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, one of my favorite branding of a bowl. I would say I love the logo and the whole idea they play on the blue field up there in Boise. Really
Long
tied
tenured
to,
name.
yeah, it's been going for a while. Same sponsor. It would kill the bowl if the famous Idaho potatoes pulled out of there. You couldn't have the Potato Bowl without famous
Yeah, they
Idaho.
would move. They would move that game.
Yeah, but you've got a couple interesting teams here. So you've got Eastern Michigan, who, if anybody watches any Eastern Michigan games, they actually play on a gray field. So getting them to continue playing on a alternate colored field out in Boise on the blue field that Boise State typically plays on, and then they've got San Jose State, who makes some trips up to Boise as well, being in the Mountain West Conference. So both kind of have some familiarity with the situation at this particular stadium.
Yeah, it's a very unique stadium. I unfortunately did not get the chance to travel up there my senior year because I was hurt. However, just talking to the guys and obviously playing at Air Force, we go up there every other year. It's tough. I don't know if there's any rules against it in the game. in bowl games like this, but I would expect San Jose to wear as much blue as possible, since they have that in their colors and they can do that. Um, Boise likes to do that for big games up there as well. Um, I didn't know quite which way to go here. I ended up going with San Jose, largely based on I think the Mountain West is better than the MAC as a whole and talent wise. And San Jose has really made an emergence over the last few years. I think looking back 4 or 5 years ago, they were probably one of the worst teams in the Mountain West. And they've made some good changes over the last 3 or 4 years to get back and be a pretty solid, consistent football team. They've got some bad losses this year, but I think overall they'll be able to get this done against the Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, and I agree with you. As you can see down there, Jared and I both going with San Jose State in this one. My main, rationale being that Eastern Michigan's very balanced offense. They like to run the ball and then throw the ball off success on the ground. San Jose State is kind of a wild card here. They started the season really strong on defense, holding a lot of teams to less than 20 points. Their last 3 games, though, this year, as they led up to the Mountain West championship game, they blew 3 straight games, allowing 43 points to San Diego State, 35 to Utah State. Their quarterback is dual threat, Siobhan Cordero. He's going to have the opportunity to exploit Eastern Michigan's defense through the air and on the ground. He's pretty safe with the ball. He holds on to it. He's only thrown 4 picks this whole season. They're strategic about when they throw and where they throw, and running from a multitude of positions. They have a few different running backs that they use there. On the Eastern Michigan side of things, though, they've got a 1,000-yard running back, Samson Evans. Really, really great season this year. You can see him pictured there, number 22. And then their quarterback as well, Taylor Powell, is just a rock solid. He's not going to give the ball away. So keys to victory for both teams is if one of these defenses can force a turnover, I think that would go a long way in changing the direction of this game, whoever can win that turnover battle, and then whoever can establish that run to throw off of, which both of these teams look to do early.
Yeah, just re-looking at the stats here, over an average of the season, their total yards gained average for the season is only 4 yards apart, and defensively it's only 30 yards. So I think this is going to be a pretty tight game. And honestly, it should be a good watch. I think I like the way that San Jose plays now. The quarterback can really move and be pretty dynamic with the ball. He's fun to watch. So I think if you've got the chance, it's an afternoon game on in the middle of the week or early in the week. If you're sitting at work with not much else to do, I think this is a good watch.
Yeah, and it's always fun to attack your sense of vision there watching the Boise State football field. So check it out. See if San Jose State can try to use that blue turf to their advantage.
If they get snow, it won't be much of an advantage.
Oh, that's right. Then you might see Eastern Michigan tip the scales in their favor. So, roofclaim.com, Boca Raton Bowl. Jared, I do have to ask, are you familiar with roofclaim.com?
No, but I would, in all seriousness, they are probably very busy down in Florida this year after the hurricane. I assume that is the business that they are in with roof insurance claims, but I do not know that for a fact.
Everybody needs a new roof in Florida, especially in that area where Boca Raton is. Another picturesque area there on the beach down in Florida. Again, contrast, see Liberty and Toledo get a chance to go to the beach while you've got a couple teams they're going out west and up into the mountains and the tundra. So this should be a good matchup. It'll be interesting to see what Liberty looks like. They haven't looked the same since we started hearing the Hugh Freeze to Auburn rumors, even while he was still there. And now that that's become official and he's left the team to go start things down in Auburn, they've been on a skid. So they lost to UConn, Virginia Tech, and New Mexico State. 2 of those are bowl eligible teams, so fair. But they were all the New Mexico State game in particular was a blowout, and that was the way that they ended their season coming into bowl season. So something interesting. They've got an interim coach, Josh Aldridge, who this will be his first stint as a head coach. He was the DC for Hugh Freeze there at Liberty. And he's going to be looking to right the ship. It's going to be a difficult thing to do for Liberty. I think part of the big issue with their skid there at the end of the season was they lost their star running back, Day Hunter. He was on pace for a 1,000-yard season, but tore something and he had to miss the remainder, unfortunately. So wishing him a speedy recovery. He's a Colorado transfer. So Toledo, though, Jared, being an Ohio guy, I'll give you a chance to speak to them.
Honestly, this pick, I did get a chance to watch a full Toledo game this year when they played Ohio State. And this quarterback, he obviously has not entered the transfer portal to this point, but I can't imagine that there are coaches out there that wouldn't take him at one of these bigger schools. He is absolutely electric with the football in his hands. I was watching him run away from guys on the Ohio State defense. And that's a defense littered with 4- and 5-star guys. This guy is a supreme athlete. I don't have his rushing stats in front of me, but when he pulls the ball down, he's electric. And he's got a little bit of that. He's got a big arm too. He can sling it down the field. He's a little sloppy with the ball at times, but I think he's the difference in this game personally.
Yeah, and that's Daquan Finn, the quarterback for Toledo, a super talented prospect there. He's still young too, so got a few more years of eligibility. You alluded to it earlier, but it'll be interesting to see if he sticks it out at Toledo for a long time, or if that's something that he'll use to propel to a bigger program in the future. Reminisce Malik Willis, I think, which is interesting that he's going to be taking on Liberty, is that he's able to, run like a running back and throw with the best of them.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up his stats here. He's only a true sophomore too, from what I can see. So he still has quite a bit of eligibility left. I'm not getting his rushing stats because I would like to see him for this year, but
I don't know his expanded rushing stats, but I have in my notes that he had 660 yards on the ground this year. And he was their leading rusher.
Yeah, he had 86 yards in the conference championship on the ground against Ohio on 18 attempts with a long of 17. He's got a couple really long runs this year as well. I remember him pulling the ball down against Ohio State. I don't recall exactly how far that one went to. Yeah, he went for 25 on a carry against Ohio State. And just so you guys understand a little bit, against that defense with probably subpar receivers, he was 10 for 19 with 153 yards passing and 70 yards on the ground on 7 carries. So at 10 yards a pop, that's pretty good against a team of that caliber.
Yeah, and here at New Age Sports as a place that likes to identify young talent, if you follow our Instagram page, you can see our Rising Stars of the Year polls are up now for fans to vote on. But Daquan Finn is definitely a name to keep an eye on as he continues to progress throughout his career. And you can start by checking out this Boca Raton Bowl. It should be a fun game to watch with him taking on sort of a depleted and defeated Liberty team that just lost their coach. Moving on to our next one, we've got a clean sweep across the board here with the Instagram fans coming in at 78% behind South Alabama. This is a team that had an awesome season this year, and they've continued to get better and better every year. First 10-win regular season in program history, at least since they've joined the FBS, the high level of Division I football. They are a defense-first team. They suffocate the run. Luckily for Western Kentucky, they're not much of a run team. They like to air it out. And their quarterback there, Austin Reed, actually made headlines a few days ago. He entered the transfer portal, but then he has now since revoked that and is coming back to join the Western Kentucky team and take on South Alabama. So that'll be a fun matchup to watch his high-powered passing offense against their tough, stout defense.
Yeah, getting away from the game a little bit, just on that decision, that seems a little strange to come out. just knowing how this system works, whether legal or not, most of these guys kind of already have a feel, some sort of a feel for what that market's going to look like for them on the transfer portal. So I don't know if he's going to, I'd assume he's good to just play in this game and then go back on the transfer portal and try to earn some stock in this game and play one last game with his team. But all these moves and sitting out in the transfer portal, it definitely changes the scope of a bowl game. But I mean, as you can see too, with these Group of Five schools, these guys are going to play in these games because they still matter for these guys.
Yeah, word on the street, just looking at some news stories here recently, is that Austin Reed actually inked a huge NIL deal with the Red Towel Trust, which is a real estate company there that is connected to Western Kentucky. So you can get a little bit of an idea of motivation there. But good for him. Go make your money. But yeah, this is going to be a fun one to watch. South Alabama, like I said, has had kind of unprecedented success. They're going to want to look to cap that off with a big win over another high-profile Group of Five team. They've got a 1,000-yard rusher there at South Alabama, LaDamian Webb, who's going to look to take advantage of Western Kentucky's porous run defense. It's not one of the better defenses in the country, especially against the run. So,
Yeah,
something that South Alabama may look to do.
yeah, I just think they're going to be too much.
Yeah, for sure. This one, you can actually go back in on our YouTube channel. We got a couple of alumni and then Air Force's active offensive lineman who was just named All-American second team, Isaac Cochran. We broke down this game ad nauseum, top to bottom, and spent an hour on it. So just go back in on our YouTube channel, check out the Armed Forces Bowl preview, and that'll give you a good idea of where we're at on this game.
That nose guard's playing. Usually nose guards would play, but you haven't heard
Yeah,
anything about
as
him
far
not
as I
playing.
can tell, yeah, I haven't seen anything that would say he is not. The Independence Bowl here. This is one that's been around for a long time. You've got Houston taking on Louisiana. A couple of teams that, depending on what year you're talking about, in the last 3 or 4 years, have been some of the top tier Group of Five teams. Not necessarily the outcomes they would have wanted. Louisiana obviously lost their coach, headed over to Florida last year. So more of a transition year for them. And then Houston is still trying to get a handle on how they're going to perform under Dana Holgerson. But yeah, Houston is who it looks like we've all picked Houston, including the Instagram fans coming in at 67% behind the Cougars. Super talented quarterback and receiver duo. You've got Clayton Tune and Nathaniel Dell. These guys like to hook up often and early throughout the game. They love to throw the ball. They don't want to run unless they have to. But definitely an interesting matchup there with Louisiana. They get essentially a home game. They're in Shreveport, but they'll have to play with their backup quarterback, Chandler Fields. He'll be the X factor. Houston allows opposing teams to kind of wreak havoc through the air. So, like I said, you've seen Houston get in a couple shootouts. They had a 70-on-70 point game earlier this season. I can't remember who against, but that was quite a game. Louisiana, if they're going to want to be able to beat Houston and keep up with them, they're going to have to do it through the air. So you're going to have to look to that backup quarterback, Chandler Fields, who they've been more or less moving along slowly as he's gotten a couple of spot starts due to injury this year. So he'll have to be able to sling it if they want to keep up with Houston. Looking at the next bowl game, you've got the Gasparilla Bowl. You got Wake Forest taking on Missouri. This is an interesting one, right? We've talked a lot about a Group of Five matchups, some really good ones, but nothing like the Power Five groups. And you've got Jared and I actually disagree on this one, so we'll get a chance to go head to head and tell you why I chose Wake. But I'll let Jared start and say why Missouri.
Why Missouri? I was really going back and forth here. And I think both teams, Wake had the better year, I think, as far as just overall how it looked, but they were also playing in the ACC, whereas the Missouri was playing in the SEC this year.
Yeah, the SEC East, though.
that I'll give you that. They had to play some good teams this year, as well. But I also uh, I knew you were gonna go with Wake, just knowing you personally. So I wanted to spread it out here. But this Mizzou team does some good things. Um, they they spread the ball around offensively, and can move it a little bit. They are 370 yards of total offense average. So they definitely can move it. It's just a matter of if they can stop it. But Wake's defense is also porous, giving up over 400 yards a game. So
Yeah, and Missouri is always interesting to watch, especially now that they're in the SEC. They kind of have that Big 12 feel about them. They like to throw the ball around. They don't necessarily play a ton of defense, but then they're embedded there in the SEC playing against some of those big physical teams. So it's always fun to kind of see them. This year they kind of broke out a little bit. They finished the season really strong with a couple of big wins. Big point working against them. Their leading receiver in terms of yardage, Dominic Lovett, actually entered the transfer portal. They do spread the ball around. Their quarterback there, Brady Cook, he can run as well. He's going to be somebody who's going to have to look to move the ball through the air and on the ground himself because this Wake Forest defense is a pretty solid one. Another point working in favor of Wake is that it looks like Sam Hartman's going to be able to play in this game. A lot of talk about transfer portal, NFL draft, things like that. But all signs are pointing to he's going to play for Wake. He's started practicing with the team in prep. And then he's going to look to his go-to guy, A.T. Perry, there at Wake Forest, another potential first-round pick this year at wide receiver, to get after Missouri's kind of middling secondary. Not great, but also not super good either. But yeah, it's an interesting game here, a case study of Wake Forest who started strong and finished weak, and then Missouri who started weak and finished strong. We'll see if that momentum plays a factor.
Wake certainly does have the edge at quarterback with Sam Hartman back there. So
Yep. I would say that Brady Cook at Missouri is a guy to watch on the rise, but yeah, definitely not to the same level as Sam Hartman just yet. All right, Jared, Easy Post. What is the Easy Post company that's sponsoring the Hawaii Bowl?
dude, how much money are they paying for these
It
things
can't be
now?
much. I'm going to sponsor my own next year.
I just so everyone is aware, all 6 people out there watching us today, I don't think we're quite financially stable enough to post or to sponsor a bowl game. But just getting into this game a little bit, I just like San Diego State. They're a tough physical team, every year in and year out. I just think coming out of the Mountain West, they're going to be too much for Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, and the Instagram fans agree with you. 62% of our voters are saying San Diego State is going to pull out this Hawaii Bowl. San Diego State is a team that's used to traveling to Hawaii, being in the same side of the Mountain West Conference as Hawaii is. So not something to overlook, is that's a pretty brutal travel schedule. Obviously, with bowl games, you get to get on the ground a few days before you would for a typical game. But yeah, that jet lag is definitely something that may come into play with that team. And I'm not sure if they went this year, but definitely within the last 2 years, that San Diego State team has already made that trip. Middle
Yeah, it's a
Tennessee.
lot it's a lot
No, go ahead.
closer. And that time change, I know they'll be out there for more than just a day, so they'll have a chance to get used to it. But that time change is a big deal going out there.
Yeah, and Middle Tennessee State. They've been a team with a lot of highs and a lot of lows this year. So you may remember early on in the season, I mentioned earlier that Marshall took down Notre Dame. Actually, in that same week, Middle Tennessee took down Miami. Obviously, we see now that Miami was not necessarily the team that we thought they were, but at the time they were ranked. But then they racked up losses against bowl eligible teams within their conference. You got UAB, UTSA, James Madison, Western Kentucky, all good teams. But again, can't expect to be taken too seriously within your conference if you can't beat any of the bowl eligible teams. They'll have to show up after that long trip we were talking about earlier. They're going to bring their A game if they want to take down San Diego State. But I will say San Diego State's been struggling themselves with some inconsistent quarterback play. Jalen Maiden, I personally don't think is going to be able to take down Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee is vulnerable in the pass game on defense. They have a really hard time stopping the pass. But, if you don't have a capable quarterback on the other end, then you're able to kind of highlight your strengths and hide that weakness a little bit. So for Maiden, it's not going to be an easy game for him. They've got a team that's based around pressuring the quarterback. They've got Jordan Ferguson, who's got 9 sacks on the season. And then they've got 2 others that are also above 5 sacks on the season. So they like to pressure the quarterback. They like to make it difficult. A lot of times that's probably why you see holes down in the back end. So it's going to have a lot to do with San Diego State's quarterback, Jalen Maiden.
Inconsistent quarterback play is kind of the story of the last several years for San Diego State. They struggle. They're never super explosive on offense. Those of you who know, they have produced a couple big time running backs over the last few years. But typical pro style, old school I formation offense most of the time. And yeah, they struggle.
All right, moving on to our next one. You've got the Quick Lane Bowl, which is in Detroit. Very cold. Luckily, though, they'll get to play that one indoors at Ford Field. And this is a little bit of an interesting one. 2 teams that you don't necessarily see all that often being mentioned at bowl time, particularly New Mexico State. This team has not been historically a very well-known or respected team. They're taking on Bowling Green, another team within the conference that has had its years, but for the most part is not necessarily considered a threat in the MAC.
No. Definitely not.
Yeah, luckily they'll get to stay kind of, relatively close as it compares to New Mexico State. That trip to Michigan will be a little bit shorter.
It's only about an hour drive for them, hour and a half up to Detroit from Bowling Green. So
yeah,
I imagine they'll have some fans in attendance. They don't have a ton. Every other teacher at my high school is a Bowling Green alum. They're a teacher factory in the state of Ohio. So maybe those guys will head up there for that game. But yeah, interesting to see them back in a bowl game this year. I don't think this game will be particularly interesting. I know we had some drama. Was that last year's Quick Lane Bowl with the fight?
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, that was in a Quick Lane Bowl. I
missed that one.
I forget the story. Probably should come with more detail if I'm going to start a story. But yeah, there was a brawl in the Quick Lane Bowl, I believe, last year towards the end of the game. But yeah, not particularly interesting here on either side, in my opinion. But I'll give the edge to the Falcons in this one.
Yeah, so Jared and then our Instagram fans obviously going the way of Bowling Green. I chose New Mexico State on this one, mostly because I think what this one's going to be is just a quarterback battle, good old-fashioned one-on-one, and see who plays better is going to come out on top NFL style. So the quarterback at New Mexico State is the offense, Diego Pavia. He's the second leading rusher on the team. He's only 30 yards short of their starting running back as far as rushing yards goes. Bowling Green has a leaky defense against the run and the pass, so I would look for Diego to get going on the ground and then turn that into some passing opportunities as well. On the other side, though, Matt McDonald, the quarterback at Bowling Green, he's had an awesome season. He's 22 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. If they can get the ball moving on the ground against New Mexico State, New Mexico State tends to perform a little bit better against the pass. So if they can get the ball moving on the ground, that'll be the key to success for Bowling Green. Their quarterback, Mac McDonald, is not particularly known for running the football, so they'll have to find other ways to do that, whereas New Mexico State's going to put everything on Diego Pavia's shoulders, and I think it'll be a fun game to watch. Not a lot of intention for New Mexico State throughout the season, but he's a really entertaining guy if you get a chance to check this game out.
Oh, I guess I'm wrong about entertainment factor.
Well, I can't blame you. There's not a lot of people checking out New Mexico State on a regular basis.
It's not going to do it for me at 12:30 p.m. the day after Christmas, I don't think.
Yeah, and oh how the mighty have fallen. I must have used an outdated logo here, but it looks like the Quick Lane Bowl is slated as a Big Ten ACC matchup, whereas here we're getting a independent versus MAC matchup. So definitely a step down for the Quick Lane Bowl, I guess, compared to some years past. Moving on to our next one, we've got the Serve Pro First Responder Bowl. Really cool thing that they do, and donate a lot to the first responders here as a result of this bowl game. But you've got the Memphis Tigers taking on Utah State, a split between Jared and I again. And the fans are on my side actually this time, with 75% of us taking the Memphis Tigers to win this game. So just to touch on Memphis a little bit, this is a team that likes to pass. They always have been. You think back to the years of Paxton Lynch, and then now Seth Hennigan, the quarterback there now, is a sophomore. They love passing the ball. Utah State defensively tends to give a little bit more leeway on the ground. So that'll be something that Memphis is going to need to look to establish, is that run game that they don't always look for. They do employ sort of a committee approach to running backs. So they should be able to stay fresh. They run an up-tempo offense. But if they can establish that run game against Utah State and open up the pass game, I think Memphis is going to be able to edge them out in this one. On the other side, though, Utah State has a pretty solid secondary led by Ike Larson. If anyone follows our Instagram page, you actually see that he was selected as the Rising Star of the Year in Mountain West Conference, voted on by our followers. So congrats to him on that. But I think it'll be a solid matchup as far as Memphis's offense versus Utah State's defense. Where I think Utah State is really going to struggle is in their quarterbacking. Cooper Legas is a fill-in. Utah State starter got hurt earlier this season, and Legas has struggled a little bit. So he's played in 9 games. He's thrown 9 picks. Memphis has some holes in their secondary. So if Cooper Legas can pick it up and play a really strong, solid game and move the ball down the field, then I think Utah State has a really good chance to win.
Yeah, they've got some talent. I think particularly on the edges, Utah State does. And this may be scar tissue for me from playing against them. They seem to just move the ball around pretty well in big games. And if they can get their guys going, especially that running back, they've got an over 1,000-yard back this season, and Tyler Jr. And also 70 catches out of their leading receiver as well this year. So if Legas can get him the ball, he is dynamic in space. So we'll see if he can get him the ball and we can go from there. But I just like Utah State coming out of the Mountain West. Give the American a little bit of a run for their money with 2 6-6 teams here.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good matchup. Definitely one to check out. Up next, you've got the Ticket Smarter Birmingham Bowl. You've got 2 Carolina teams playing in this one that don't necessarily get to go head-to-head too often, so this could be a fun matchup as far as getting the fans involved. So you've got Coastal and East Carolina. Instagram fans heavy on Coastal Carolina. They've obviously been a well-established team and brand name in the last few years, ever since head coach Jamie Chadwell got to Coastal. That being said, Jamie Chadwell is now on the way out of Coastal. So he took the Liberty job that was vacated by Hugh Freeze when he went over to Auburn. So they'll be running this game without their head coach and their leader over the last few years, as they've seen this unprecedented rise. Another departure, the star quarterback who's been there a few years and been with them through that upgrade on the team, Grayson McCall, has entered the transfer portal. He's actually looking at some SEC schools that are interested in bringing him in. So it's somebody they're definitely going to miss. But I will highlight that no matter who's playing quarterback there for Coastal, they've got a really strong receiver duo of Sam Pinckney and then Jared Brown. Both are some really awesome receivers out there on the outside. If you double one of them's open. So makes it really difficult for defenses. But as far as East Carolina, Jared, what made you choose East Carolina?
I like East Carolina this year up front. Watching them in a couple games early, they play physical up front on the defensive side of the ball, and they fly around. Particularly back to that NC State game, they didn't end up winning that game, but they do fly around and they make plays all over the field. I also like their quarterback play. 3,400 yards for Allers this year, 23 TDs, and only 5 interceptions. And for throwing the ball 430 times this year, to only have 4 interceptions, that's pretty. Or 5 interceptions. Sorry, that's pretty good ball control. And if you can not turn the ball over in a bowl game like this, you're going to have a better chance to win, I think.
Yeah, and I agree. I like East Carolina in this one too. You mentioned how Holton Aller's stats have shaken out, and he's had an awesome season. But that starts with the run game, and you've got an absolute beast there at the running back position for East Carolina and Keaton Mitchell. He gets it going for them. He makes the front seven bite on those play fakes and makes it easy for Allers to get the ball outside. I mentioned Coastal's duo there at the receiver position, but East Carolina actually has one of its own. They've got Isaiah
Winstead is a
Winstead.
dog.
Yeah, Isaiah Winstead and CJ Johnson there on the outside that have both put up some pretty big numbers. So, again, I give the edge to East Carolina here because of that balance. Coastal looks to move the ball through the air a lot more, I would say, and then having to go with the backup quarterback after McCall transferring, I think is going to hurt them a lot. And having East Carolina at full strength and ready to go on the ground game and through the air, I think I give them the edge on this one.
Yeah, and in these bowl games, you can't. There's no telling how the team's going to react to not having the head coach there on the sideline as well. It's either a motivating factor or that head coach was a key piece in the machine. So we'll see a little bit of that as well.
Absolutely. Got our next bowl game. We've got the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. Split here between Jared and I, and then a pretty close poll for our Instagram fans. So they're leaning Oklahoma State. Jared is as well. So Jared, what do you see out of the Cowboys this year?
I think the Cowboys have stuck to for playing in the Big 12. They do seem to be one of the more physical teams in the Big 12. And I don't know if the audience has picked up on this, but the brand of ball I like to see is definitely that big physical type style, and I'd like to see that. I like to see teams fly around on defense, which Wisconsin can do as well. I just don't trust Wisconsin much this year coming out of the Big Ten West. Not winning that division for a Wisconsin team. I can't trust you going forward into a bowl game like this. Obviously, the hype around the program going into next year with the fresh hire, I think will only do good things. I just don't think not a good year for Wisconsin this year. I like Oklahoma State here.
Yeah, interesting enough, you mentioned the new hire at Wisconsin. So Luke Fickell coming over from Cincinnati had a lot of great seasons there. We mentioned him earlier. He has actually opted to coach this game. He will be the head coach on the sideline for Wisconsin.
Just
Yeah.
so the audience knows, if you don't watch a lot of college football or haven't paid attention, that's a very rare move in a situation like this.
Yeah, so he's diving in head first. I think you'll see a lot of guys on that Wisconsin team, especially some of the younger guys, sort of treating this as their chance to make an impression. So
he is going to hit the portal pretty hard, I think, and look for some guys to come in there.
Definitely, yeah. So I think you'll get the best out of all the young guys. Another thing to keep an eye on for Wisconsin, quarterback Graham Mertz has entered the transfer portal. He's been the starter there for a few years. So as far for the purposes of this game, we don't know where he's going to end up, but his backups, none of them have significant game experience. I do have to caveat that with saying, watching a few Wisconsin games over the year, I think that actually may be a benefit.
He's not the safest
disrespectful, but yeah. So I think that they're going to pound the run game. They're going to work Braylon Allen, who's their 1,000-yard rusher, the way that Wisconsin always does. They tend to turn these guys out like a factory, but Braylon Allen's been a really strong running back. Oklahoma State's got a weak defense this year, especially against the rush. Oklahoma State's quarterback Spencer Sanders, who's missed a couple games through the season to injury, has actually entered the transfer portal as well. Luckily for them, their backup, Garrett Rangel, has started a couple of games while Spencer was injured. So he's got a little bit of experience, but Oklahoma State's going to have to lean on that run game. And Wisconsin's run defense is the strength of that defense. So I just think Wisconsin has too many things working in its favor for Oklahoma State this game, but it definitely could shake up to be a really good matchup. Next up, we've got the Military Bowl presented by Peraton.
I don't know what
Peraton,
is.
I'm not familiar with either. So you've got Central Florida taking on Duke. This is actually played on the Naval Academy grounds there in Annapolis. So both teams kind of moving up north to jump in on this game, and I think we've got a really good matchup here between Mikey Echoes, Duke Blue Devils, and then Gus Malzahn, Central Florida. So some really prominent coaches bringing their teams up to Annapolis to face off.
Yeah, I like this matchup. I was pretty intrigued when this one came out. I think it'll test. It's a group of 5 team that's kind of prided themselves on trying to play with the big boys, and then you've also got a Duke Blue Devils team who, in a Power 5 conference, is always trying to compete to say that they belong. They had a solid year this year, most definitely. I like where UCF is at offensively as we go forward here into this game, and I like Gus Malzahn here. He's done it before, obviously, in some really big games. Obviously, he's not at Auburn anymore, so there's something there. But I do like him in this game. And then I'll let you go into Duke a little bit here, but after that, a few comments on just the Military Bowl and playing in Annapolis in general.
Yeah, so just to touch on Duke, something that's gotten lost in translation in the ACC with the rise of Drake May at North Carolina. You've got a young quarterback there at Duke as well, and Riley Leonard, who's every bit as talented, it seems. Put up some really big numbers this year, both passing and on the ground. A former, actually rated recruit in basketball as well. Didn't make the team at Duke, not quite that good, but just a really talented athlete and somebody who's really able to make some good reads and get the ball out to a good group of wide receivers. Central Florida, something that I see as their strengths coming back. They've got John Reese Plumlee, their quarterback, who's their leading passer and leading rusher. He's been rehabbing an injury, but he's going to be back for this one. He's been practicing with the team. But again, I really like what Riley Leonard's been able to do, teaming up with the head coach, the new head coach there, and giving Duke that return to relevancy that they've been missing for a few years now. And I just think that dual threat aspect of what he brings to the table is going to be tough for Central Florida to combat. Luckily, they do have a guy that they practice against every day on the other side, and John Reese Plumlee, that will give them a good look at sort of what Leonard can do. But yeah, ultimate keys to victory here for either team is going to be the turnover margin. Duke has been pretty good at forcing some turnovers this year, so if Central Florida can hold on to the ball, they'll have a chance to win. But I think Duke's going to be able to force a couple turnovers if they come to play the way that they have the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think so. I did also have to get the edge. UCF. I got a former teammate whose brother plays offensive line over there for UCF, so a little edge for them there as well in that. All the way from Hawaii, he went to UCF. So, but in general too, that game being played in Annapolis, had the chance to go to that stadium a couple times. Once as a player, injured, did not play there, but also then as an alumni the following trip back, and that place is a very special environment on game day, especially for Navy games. I imagine they'll get some of that same atmosphere in Annapolis in general. Luckily for the Duke fans and the UCF fans, if they do go, it's an interesting experience with the campus right there in the heart of downtown Annapolis. I really like it there.
Yeah, super cool place to play. Right there on the water too. Moving on, Liberty Bowl, sponsored by AutoZone. I love this. It's something familiar to me. I think AutoZone's been sponsoring the Liberty Bowl for 20 years. So
they lost it there for a couple years, didn't they?
Oh, okay. Well, I missed that. But good to see some tradition sticking around in the Liberty Bowl. And this is kind of a cool matchup too. You've got some old Big West teams taking each other on, Kansas and Arkansas. an old rivalry that they haven't gotten a chance to play in a while. But this should be kind of a fun one. You do have the Instagram fans as well as Jared and I are all taking Arkansas, but a really big season for Kansas this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting back to a bowl game for Kansas is that's a win. I know 6-6 like isn't the greatest record at all, but at as a Kansas Jayhawks program, getting back to 6-6 is an impressive feat and can't be taken lightly. But I think this Arkansas team should probably be closer to 8-4, and maybe even a 9-win team. I don't know if you had a chance to watch any of their games, but they're a really solid team. I really like KJ's playing, correct?
Yes, yeah, he's going to be. I actually think he's coming back to play next season as well.
Yeah, I really like KJ Jefferson in this offense. He makes some pretty good decisions with the football, throwing it, and they'll use him in the run game some too, to complement their running back. And he is a big, physical, strong runner. Obviously not Cam Newton, but does some Cam Newton-like things in the run game and the pass game. I give Arkansas the edge largely because of him on offense.
Yeah, I like Arkansas on this one too, especially that quarterback play of KJ Jefferson, but then his backfield teammate Raheem Sanders, young running back who's also putting up some really big numbers. I will say there's a couple of things that we do have working in Kansas's favor. Arkansas's defensive coordinator Barry Odom actually took a head coaching job elsewhere, so he won't be with the team, as well as their leading tacklers. Actually, their top two leading tacklers, Drew Sanders, who's declared for the draft, the Alabama transfer, and then linebacker Bumper Pool is out with an injury. So they'll be missing a few guys in the middle of that defense. Some of the people that they rely on heavily to make plays on that side of the ball. For Kansas, you may remember about midway through the season they were actually going mano a mano with TCU on College Game Day to determine who was going to be that front runner in the Big 12. Obviously, it didn't go Kansas's way, and they stumbled a little bit after that injury to Jalen Daniels, their quarterback. But Jalen Daniels is back now. He's got a couple more games back since returning from injury. But Kansas is coming off of three pretty big blowout losses to Big 12 opponents. They do have a strong running game and freshman running back Devin Neal. But yeah, again, I think it's a little bit too much for Kansas to overcome what Arkansas is able to do on offense. I don't think they'll be able to catch up.
Yeah, I just re-looking at their Arkansas's schedule right now. The loss to Mizzou, I think they're more probably should have won that game. More talented. They ended up losing by 2. They took LSU to the wire. 13-10 was the final score, and then kind of honestly an inexplicable loss there against Liberty. I do think KJ was out for that game, but still bad loss for them. And just that right there makes them a 9-win team. I think those were all winnable games, and I just think they're going to be too much for Kansas here.
All right, the Holiday Bowl, which is played out in San Diego. We got a clean sweep here. Oregon taking it. 78% of our Instagram followers are choosing Oregon. One big storyline to watch, Drake May and North Carolina's struggled to end the season, but around week 8, week 9, he was considered a Heisman Trophy candidate as a freshman. So definitely a fun quarterback matchup here between Bo Nix and Drake May. Drake May will have the upper hand in one facet of the fact that Christian Gonzalez, the potential first-round pick out of Oregon, is declared for the draft and won't be playing in this game. But on the other hand, his top receiver, Josh Downs at North Carolina, is also choosing that same route. So sort of offset each other there, but you have to imagine there's some more talent in the wide receiver room for Drake May to work with. On Oregon side of things, though, you've got Bo Nix, who's lost his offensive coordinator, Kenny Dillingham, the guy that got him to Oregon. He will be returning for next year, I believe, unless I've misread something. But word on the street is that Bo Nix is going to be back, and without Kenny Dillingham this time. But I would expect the offense to be business as usual. UNC's defense gives a lot of room for attacking downfield. So I expect to see Bo Nix doing some things on the ground and through the air.
Yeah, I largely just had to go with Oregon here because their offense has been solid, and UNC's defense has been pretty abysmal this year, which I hate to say, having a former coach who I do like on that staff, but they just haven't been good defensively, and it's been a little too much for Drake May to overcome. And honestly, coming down the stretch, some of those struggles, right? When you have to score that many points, you can start to force things, especially as a young quarterback. And then also, you can see this in college football a lot. Young guys will come out and not really know any better, and they play really well, and then can struggle there towards the end of the year, just trying to do too much or knowing a little bit too much. I mean, you saw with Bo Nix at Auburn, it came out really strong and kind of lost it there. But yeah, I just have to give the edge to Oregon, um, just solely based on UNC's defensive woes.
Yeah, I like this matchup a lot, though. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that one should
Um,
be a good game.
yeah, moving on to our next one. This was the only unanimous decision from our Instagram fans, and I actually tend to agree. I think this is a really difficult matchup for Texas Tech. Sort of a weaker defense coming up against one of the strongest running defenses that I've seen in maybe all my time of watching college football. They've got a three-headed attack of Quinshawn Judkins, Zach Evans, the transfer, and then also the quarterback Jackson Dart being quite a capable runner himself. To be honest, Texas Tech, they've got a strong edge rusher. Tyree Wilson, I believe, is his name. He's projected a top pick as well, but I would be surprised to see him play in this game. I don't know if he's announced that he won't be, but again, being a potential top 10 pick, I don't see him playing. And other than that, just defensively, I don't think Texas Tech stands a chance.
Yeah, I just don't think they can hold up. This Old Miss team, Lane Kiffin coach teams in general are a little strangely up and down and just kind of inconsistent, but they're always capable of putting up a lot of points. And when you give them a bad defense, more often than not, Lane Kiffin is going to put up a bunch of points on you, especially with the offensive talent that he does have with Dart and those running backs in the backfield. So I think they're just going to be too much. I think this is just a bad matchup for Texas Tech going into this game.
Yeah, and they're riding a wave of a big win to get into this game. They beat Oklahoma in a close one to close out the season. We'll see if the momentum swings with them as they come into this game. Maybe they can get off to an early start. But yeah, again, I think we're all on the same page that Ole Miss is likely to run away with this one. But still a worthwhile game to watch. Texas Tech will be playing in the state of Texas, so
Lathan
and sort of
also
close
prone to
geographic.
just inexplicable losses. So they could very well lose this
It's true.
game, but I don't see that as a likely option.
Yep, I agree. All right, the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. This one's played in Yankee Stadium, and these are two perfect teams I think to play in
It's a
that
new
one. Series.
sponsor. Bad Boy had a bowl game before, but it was not this one, if I
Yeah,
do
I
remember correctly.
definitely like the sound of that one. But yeah, Syracuse sort of getting a close to home game in the state of New York down there at Yankee Stadium, and then Minnesota, another team that's more than equipped to play in the cold weather. But we're all on the same page, taking Minnesota here. Instagram fans are behind Minnesota at 67% support. The reason I like Minnesota in this one is it's just one guy. It's Mohamed Ibrahim. He's the running back there at
Stud.
Minnesota. Absolute monster. He finished the season with almost 1,600 rushing yards, not counting what he's going to do in the bowl game. They do have a little bit of inconsistent quarterback play. Tanner Morgan is the quarterback there at Minnesota. They try to get the ball in Ibrahim's hand as much as possible, so you don't get to see him do a whole lot. On the other side of things, though, Syracuse also a strong run game. Sean Tucker is rushed for over 1,000 yards, and then their quarterback as well, Garrett Schrader, is a capable runner.
Yeah,
And
that's also the strength of Minnesota's defense, though. Probably, I don't have the list, but they've got to be in the top 10 or so in the country in rush defense this year, only allowing about 106 yards a game on the ground. So
Yeah, Minnesota's consistently top ranked defensive team and sort of all facets, but especially yeah, stuffing the run there. So Syracuse is kind of a tough pull here. Minnesota, I believe, finished 8-4. But if you looked at their stats by the numbers as far as what their offense and defense output is, you would think that would be a team competing for a national championship. It's just a tough draw for Syracuse here. Moving on to the Cheez It Bowl, which has actually moved locations. I don't know if that was last year or the year prior, but that game is played in Orlando now.
Yeah, it started last year. It moved into a uh, two Power Five team slot from I think it was that in Scottsdale as well. There just wasn't anybody to fill it the year that we played down there. But yeah, in Orlando now, we got two teams that always have high expectations coming into the year, and just didn't quite live up to those expectations this year. Obviously, transition year here for Oklahoma without Lincoln Riley, but it wasn't the same. Obviously, going 6-6 kind of year for them, and then Florida State. I don't know about you, Tanner, but the program when we were younger was kind of always around and always felt like a really solid program, and they just haven't been that lately. They've been kind of lost looking for something. But 9-3, 13th in the country. I think that might be a little overzealous, but I yeah, I didn't really know here. Went with Oklahoma. Um, Probably leaning the other way as we sit here and talk through it again. But
Yeah, I gotta say this is the first one that I've been sort of baffled. I'm surprised that this one didn't end up the way the Ole Miss Texas Tech one did with 100% of the fans going in Florida State. You see 78% there. You mentioned that Florida State, at least recently under Coach Mike Norvell, has been sort of not up to par for what Florida State has been historically. I will say something that he was almost able to reinvent the team through the transfer portal. So both of the two guys we have pictured here, quarterback Jordan Travis has had a fantastic year. And then on the defensive side of things, Jared Verse is looking at potentially being a first round pick either this year or next, depending on what decision he makes. And then, yeah, super strong offense. They've got playmakers everywhere. They've got an awesome young running back. They've got uh, a really strong receiver. They've got a 6'7" receiver, Johnny Wilson, who goes up and gets pretty much any jump ball. And then they've got, again, I mentioned Jared Verse already, but then Jamie Robinson as well are both really talented players that are draft eligible, and they're going to play in this game. So obviously, some culture's been built there that not a lot of teams have. When I look at Oklahoma this year, just being honest, they've coasted off of their brand
yeah,
recognition into this game. You look at a couple teams, and I know the fan bases aren't happy about it, like Baylor, who's playing in the Armed Forces Bowl, feel like they had a better season than Oklahoma out of the Big 12, but because of the name on the chest, they've got elevated a little bit into playing a game that I think is a little bit out of their depth. So that's why I like
it's
here.
about dollar signs.
Yep, you can definitely see that at play throughout college football and in all aspects, and I think this is another example of that here. The next one, you got the Alamo Bowl, and I really like this matchup. You've got Texas taking on Washington State. I actually like Texas, or excuse me, not Washington State, Washington. I actually like Texas in this one. You saw early on in the season Texas at full strength with Quinn Ewers under center. They took Alabama down to the wire. Obviously, Alabama didn't end up being the undisputed number one team that we probably all thought that they would be, but obviously a very strong team nonetheless. And then just down the stretch, Texas, in the face of some adversity, was able to put up some big numbers and take some really tough teams down to the wire, regardless. On the other side, though, you've got Michael Penix Jr., who was arguably a Heisman candidate himself. If he had seen more team success, I think he would have seen more of his names included in those conversations. So, a really fun quarterback battle between these two, and I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, interestingly thought that Michael Penix Jr. Move in the transfer portal from Indiana was interesting. I saw it. Um, Maybe this is just me with a little Big Ten bias. I saw it a fairly lateral move, but obviously he's taken advantage, and it's been more than that. And he's been able to elevate, especially the last few games, elevate on a national stage. I waffled back and forth on this one because I do like Texas a lot with Quinn Ewers at quarterback. I think just from the first couple plays we saw him against Alabama, you were able to say, "Oh man, Texas has a guy again." But I went with Washington because I like what Michael Penix brings to the game. He's mobile. He's going to lay out for for some yards as we've seen in bowl games in the past. Um, I just think I think I gave them the Washington the edge for that reason. I can't be understated though. Bijan Robinson in the backfield for Texas uh, is probably the consensus number one running back in this year's draft. And I don't know if it's that close with anybody else really. So that'll be tough. But I just leaning with Washington here from the quarterback play perspective.
Yeah, definitely something that Texas is gonna have to look to supplement elsewhere as they've lost, Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson likely won't be playing in this game, both their top 2 running backs, so, something they'll have
Oh
to
yeah,
find somewhere else to get that production out of.
yeah. That's going to be a tough miss for them. I think.
Yeah, for sure. The Duke's Mayo Bowl, another fun, brand-sponsored bowl here.
You're
I've
a
got
mayonnaise guy too, and the brownies, baby.
We're all mayonnaise guys. Maryland Terps taking on NC State and the Wolfpack. Some kind of fun, interesting teams that made a little bit of a run and a little bit of noise in their conferences this year. Maryland put up a couple of good fights against Michigan and some other big teams in the Big Ten. Weren't able to pull off the upset on any of those, but still put up a valiant effort. NC State was kind of expected to be a little bit more this year. Obviously, a lot of that was hurt when their quarterback Devin Leary got hurt. But that kind of gave way for young quarterback MJ Morris to take the reins, and he's shown that he can be quite a formidable quarterback himself. Unfortunately for NC State, he's actually injured as well, and QB3 was benched in favor of QB4 a couple of weeks back.
That's
So
always
that's the
good.
reason I'm going with Maryland here. Jared, I see you're going with Maryland as well. If they were at full strength, I think I'd like NC State here. But again, just Maryland kind of being battle tested, and then it's hard to win when you're down to your 4th quarterback.
Yeah, I just really like Maryland here. They've played some really good football teams. Pretty close. It took Ohio State a long time to end up the final score. It looks like they pulled away from Maryland, but that was a close game for a long time too. And that was not that long after the Michigan game. Maryland has some bad losses this year, getting skunked by Penn State 30-0. But I think they've got the edge in this game, especially going against the 4th quarterback for NC State going into the season as the 4th guy.
Yeah. The Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. You've got Pittsburgh and UCLA. I like this matchup a lot, actually. Israel Abanikanda is the star there for Pitt, a 1,000-yard rusher himself. They do everything on the ground. Keaton Slovis has re-entered the transfer portal. He came to Pittsburgh through the transfer portal this season, but has re-entered. They're going to get Phil Dracovic, the Boston College quarterback, but he won't be there, obviously, for this bowl game. So that'll be a factor to watch. And then you've got UCLA, who had a fantastic season, was in the Pac-12 championship hunt right up to the very end. Dorian Thompson-Robinson finally put it all together this season. Was one of the nation's best quarterbacks. So I like UCLA in this one. I think they're a more complete team, especially with Pitt kind of having a couple holes in the roster due to the transfer portal and some injuries, whereas UCLA is more at full strength.
Yeah, I'll be brief on this one. I just think Chip Kelly's got this program kind of back, if you would say, at UCLA. And DTR's had a finally, as you said, put it all together. He has had some flashes early in his career, but this season he truly came into his own a little bit. So I think this is UCLA all the way.
Yeah, and we've got a consensus from the Instagram followers on this one as well, 100% saying UCLA is going to win. Tax Slayer Gator Bowl. This is a fun matchup. A team that two teams that kind of started off weaker than expected, but finished really strong and sort of pulled off some games that we didn't think they'd be able to pull off, especially South Carolina in that regard. They knocked off Tennessee while they were still in the playoff hunt, and then were able to take down Clemson as well at the end of the year.
I'll be brief here for you, Tanner. I truly just do not trust Spencer Rattler, so I had to go with Notre Dame.
Yeah, and totally fair assessment of these teams too. I do like a little bit of the talent that South Carolina has on the outside. Antoine
Yeah.
Juice Wells is an absolute stud. You'll be hearing his name called on draft day a couple of years from now. But yeah, Notre Dame as well. And I'll put it simply myself: I don't trust the coaching staff there at Notre Dame. Marcus
Uh,
Freeman has definitely had some moments, but he's also had some moments in the other direction. They've
I'm a
got a
Marcus
strong run game.
Freeman guy.
Yeah, you've got a strong run game, and Aldrick Estime is a really strong running back. If it comes down to it, quarterback play, I'm not sure what you're going to get out of Notre Dame. Um,
Not a ton. Good tight end up there
yeah,
too. Is he
well,
playing?
yeah, Michael Mayer is not going to play. He's
Okay,
declared, and then
makes
Drew
sense.
Pine is in the transfer portal. So, just kind of a mixed bag. You never know what you're going to get. Spencer Rattler, he's got all the talent, so it's just a matter of which Spencer Rattler shows up on this one, I think. Arizona Bowl, the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl. So this is kind of the last group of 5 big hurrah that they get a chance to play. And you've got a couple interesting teams here. Ohio taking on Wyoming. Ohio, strong offensive team, and then Wyoming, who's built primarily around the defense. Jared and I both like Wyoming in this one, and then the Instagram fans are going with Ohio.
Yeah, I just like the way that Wyoming's been playing this year. They're another one of those physical teams. Got some good wins. Played some teams really close, but then also like you look at their last game against Fresno, 30-0, which is a little inexplicable. I just don't think Ohio is on the same level as Fresno by any means. So I like Wyo here. Again, I just think the Mountain West, the top tier, top 4 or 5 teams in the Mountain West are better than the top couple in the MAC, but I could be wrong. And good to see Ohio back in the conference championship game. Uh, they're back and forth, but a consistent presence in the MAC.
Yeah, this will be a fun matchup. Like I said, Wyoming likes to stack that front seven and try to make plays on defense there. Ohio's heavy run team that likes to get the ball in Sia Bangura's hands. Really talented young running back there at Ohio. But yeah, it'll be fun to watch these two teams square off. Orange
No.
Bowl, and this is going to be a fun one. A lot of injuries, a lot of transfer portal, a lot of draft sit out guys in this
Yeah.
one.
Who's playing?
Yeah, that's what you have to ask yourself, right? So Tennessee, who's prided themselves on their passing game with Hendon Hooker making plays with Jalen Hyatt. Both of those guys will not be available. But you do have Joe Melton, who has some starting experience. He played a couple games down the stretch for Tennessee once Hooker got hurt. Played solid. He had some good times at Michigan as well, but obviously found himself transferring. Brew McCoy, who was a consistent presence as a receiver there, will get a chance to kind of show off what he can do as a number 1 receiver with Jalen Hyatt sitting this one out. It'll be fun to watch. He's a former top recruit. He's had a little bit of a turbulent career, jumping around from school to school, but finally found a home at Tennessee. So that's what I'm most looking forward to from Tennessee. On the other side, though, this will be Cade Klubnik's team from Clemson. Obviously, DJ Uiagalelei has announced that he's going into the transfer portal. And this is Cade Klubnik's team going forward, the freshman. So it'll be fun to watch him kind of out there running the team. Very Deshaun Watson-esque when I've seen him in a few spot moments throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean that's clearly high praise. I think with Tennessee, Joe Milton was in the battle for that starting spot. I think going into the season with Hendon Hooker, I believe
Yeah,
they made
last
that decision. They made that decision late. Um, I just like Tennessee here, going off the year that they've had. It'd be good to see them finish it off, and truly, um, a little subjective for me here. Not a Dabo guy, so gonna go with Tennessee.
Yeah, you've got the two orange teams playing in the Orange Bowl, which is a fun matchup. 50-50. I believe this is the only 50-50 matchup from the Instagram voting, but yeah, I like Clemson in this one. They have a history of just being a top tier defense, and they continue to churn out some top prospects on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, we mentioned some of Tennessee's
The
turnover.
D tackle's not eligible this year, right?
Brissy, he
Yeah.
is. I don't know if he's planning on playing. I haven't heard anyone that is planning on opting out at Clemson, but it seems like there's always someone behind them, even if they do, and that's why I give the edge to Clemson is just that defensive consistency. Whereas
The
Tennessee's
depth,
strength on the offensive side is is a little bit depleted.
yeah, I will give the edge. Clemson is going to have more depth going into a game like this, just having built that recruiting base for a little bit longer period of time with Dabo there, rather than this Tennessee team kind of flash in the pan from the transfer portal. I think Heupel can keep it up. Some of these guys have been at Tennessee for a while. I just don't think he has the horses in the back all the way yet, ready to go for a game like this.
Yeah, definitely a good one to watch, though. It should be a great matchup. The Music City Bowl. So Kentucky and Iowa are going to meet in Nashville. We've got a split here. The fans going with Iowa at 67%. I like Iowa as well. Jared has got Kentucky in this one.
Yeah, another one here. I texted you this when we were going over the schedule. Not a lot of offense. Not a lot of offensive firepower. Really going to be happening in this game, from what I can see. I just gave the edge to Kentucky. They are a more explosive, I think, on the offensive side of the ball than Iowa. But Iowa's defense is probably why you picked them. So I'll let you go into that a little bit.
Yeah, just being honest. I mean, the numbers are plain and simple. Iowa's defense is very tough to overcome. You have a hard time finding times where Iowa is able to put up more than 20 points, and most of the time they don't need to. So it's honestly what this one comes down to is I think if Iowa can kick a field goal, they're going to win. I don't see where Kentucky's going to be able to manufacture any points.
Yeah,
Um,
is Will Levis playing?
Will Levis has opted out, and their 1,000-yard rusher Chris Rodriguez has also opted out. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's going to be tough to overcome.
they've got a solid receiver room. I don't know what's waiting in the wings behind Levis. I know he's missed some starts, but I haven't kept up with the team probably as much as I should. But yeah, I think the quarterback and running back positions are going to have a huge hole, and taking on a defense like Iowa is not an ideal situation to have question marks in those areas.
Yeah, I know they just brought in a new offensive coordinator, or made a big move at offensive coordinator for next year as well, for Kentucky. I I do think that this Kentucky program, growing up in Southwest Ohio, this program in Lexington, always a basketball school. Mark Stoops, however, has gotten this Kentucky program recruiting a lot out of Ohio, and the surrounding areas. He's done a great job recruiting, I think, to get this program to be more consistent and relevant over the last 3 or 4 years as football. He actually makes more than Coach Cal now, which has some Kentucky people, including my grandmother, pretty upset. I think
Yeah,
they don't think
definitely
he's
a
quite
point of
earned that, but Cal hasn't done much lately either. So
yeah. Well, all right. Moving on. I like to stir the pot a little bit. I took Kansas State here in the Sugar Bowl against Alabama. Again, it comes back to that transfer portal. Who's playing? Who's not? Who cares? That's honestly where I'm at with Kansas State is I think this team cares to win a Sugar Bowl, and I think Alabama would rather just pack it up and get ready for next season. Coaching staff, players as well. You've seen it a couple of times, and you never know what you're going to get with Alabama when they don't make the playoff. Is you've seen times where they've lost to a Utah team that had no business playing with them, and then you've seen other times where they've kind of ran away with the game to show everyone that they made a couple mistakes throughout the season, but they're still Alabama. So we'll see who we get. I just think Kansas State's got some guys that are on fire to play in a BCS bowl, to prove that Kansas State is a national brand to be respected, whereas Alabama I think is is already looking to what's going to happen next year. I mean, there's question marks: who's going to play quarterback, who's going to play running back, which receivers are still here. We've got a couple of receivers that caught some big balls this year in the transfer portal. So just so many question marks for Alabama. I couldn't pick them on this one.
Yeah, I think Alabama. I'll get to this game specifically, but I think Alabama over the next few years is going to be interesting with Saban at the helm in this transfer portal NIL timeframe. Because by all accounts, Saban coaches guys really hard, and he brings in a lot of guys that I don't know if they're going to want to handle that, and they have an easier out and options to go places. However, their boosters are going to pay to keep guys coming. They pay a lot of money. I don't know if you saw it the other day. I saw a tweet the other day. Ohio State was in competition with Georgia actually for a recruit, and we're not in the same number of zeros behind money that they were going to be able to give this kid to sign. So these SEC programs, Alabama and Georgia specifically, it's going to be interesting as we move forward here to see how they keep talent. I think they'll sign a lot of guys. We'll be interested to see how they keep it around. But it's Sugar Bowl, damn near going to be a home game for Alabama. There's going to be a lot of Alabama fans there. I'll give them the edge on that. If they show up, they can run away with this game. So I'll give them an edge.
Yeah, definitely the talent gap is significant, but yeah, and they do things a little bit differently down in the South. So definitely going to be interesting to see that unfold as recruiting continues to play out in the transfer portal. The ReliaQuest Bowl, and this one's kind of going to kick off on a sad note. Mississippi State's head coach Mike Leach obviously passed away this week. Again, share our condolences to his family and the Mississippi State program and all of his colleagues that he's worked with throughout the years. But just getting back into sort of the football game here, Mississippi State. I think this is going to be a situation where you could potentially see, one of two things from Mississippi State. Either they're going to obviously feel that and maybe not be able to perform the way that they have throughout the season, or you could see them really step up and put forth sort of a tribute. And I think you will see that. The reason I've got Illinois here is just the coaching edge. I think the inexperience is going to show with an interim taking on a battle-tested guy who's been a head coach at multiple levels of college football, and Brett Bielema, and then has spent some time in the NFL as well as a coordinator and position coach.
Yeah, I gave the Mississippi State the edge on this one. I think there's definitely two ways. If they channel the emotion correctly, I think they can come out and play a really inspired game and play really well and be too much offensively for Illinois. Just talent and athlete wise on the edges and their quarterback play specifically. But yeah, this should be a good game, hopefully. That Illinois coaching staff has quite a few guys from Air Force on it right now. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Cool. Yeah, and I think America's behind Mississippi State in this one too. So we're all on the same page here and trying to memorialize Coach Leach as best as they can. So best of luck to Mississippi State in this game. Cotton Bowl. This is an interesting one. You get the Group of 5 team in that gets to play in the BCS Bowl every year. You could make the argument that although Tulane had a historical season, one of the weaker Group of 5 teams that have found their way into one of these games. They have
I don't think we have to sugarcoat it. They might be the weakest Group of 5 team to make it into one of these games. They have 3 losses this year.
I think that's right.
Yeah. And they're playing against a USC team. The big guys are playing for USC, correct? Caleb Williams is still too young to leave.
Caleb Williams is injured, but is tracking to play.
Okay.
Jordan Addison, I'm not sure, the receiver, and then Tupelo too on the defensive line as well. I'm not 100% sure. I believe he's playing as well.
Okay. I mean, I just think I just think the talent level, even if USC is missing a few of their top guys, is going to be too much for Tulane. Um, I think this is going to be part of the issue. I'm a proponent for a bigger playoff, but when we go to 12 teams, I think we're going to have a few of these games like this because both of these teams would have been in, and Tulane probably would have been 12th and playing Georgia close to it. And it's just not going to go well for them this year, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. And not to mention that USC had their playoff chances ended on a sour note. So being able to get a chance to come beat up on a sort of lesser talented and lesser athletically gifted team, I think they're going to put the pedal down, and Lincoln Riley's going to be out to prove something.
Yeah, and at this level of college football too, there's some extent of posturing going on as far as Lincoln Riley's trying to get these guys to play well, because if he can make a statement, that helps him going into next year on the
Yeah,
national stage.
absolutely. So we get to our second Cheez-It sponsored bowl game here. You've got the LSU
God, they're
Tigers.
throwing around cash.
Yeah, Cheez-It is all over it. And then you've got Purdue. I'm just to share as some things have developed. I almost wish at this point that you could bump teams out of bowl games, depending on some of these headlines that you hear. So Purdue's lost their head coach. Nothing against them; they're a solid team at full strength, and I think they could play LSU well. But they've lost their head coach to Louisville. He went back home to be the head coach for the Cardinals. They've lost their quarterback Aiden O'Connell. So I mean, just looking at this team and a couple of the key positions, there's a few others as well, either entering the transfer portal or injury or whatever. I just don't see them being able to keep up with an LSU team.
I haven't seen the headline yet. Is Brom staying to coach this game, or is he out previous to?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I do believe he's already arrived in Louisville. I don't know if he's going to come back to coach, but
It's very rare because those guys like to get out on the recruiting
yeah,
trail and start getting their hands around the program as quick as possible. But yeah, I had to take LSU here, a depleted Purdue team coming out of the Big Ten West. I mean, you saw how they played Michigan. They were able to hang in there for a little while, but I think the LSU talent level will eventually pull away from Purdue in this game.
yeah, and a couple guys to watch, young guys. You've got a young running back at Purdue, Devin Mockabee, who had an awesome season, and then young linebacker at LSU, Harold Perkins is a top talent and on the defensive side of the ball and sort of the freshman and sophomore classes. So at least a couple of people to keep an eye on. But again, I don't think this game's going to be close. And then I believe capping us off, this will be the last one we talk about today, is the Rose Bowl game, and I think we've got a pretty good matchup on our hands with Penn State taking on Utah.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I kind of waffled on this one because honestly, I haven't seen like Penn State's been like a little up and down, or just kind of quiet, I guess maybe not necessarily as up and down, but just a little quiet this year. And then Utah obviously starting the year off really hot against uh, Florida down at Florida. Just kind of, I don't want to say let off the gas a little bit. They just didn't have the gas left to finish the year in some big spots. And I like Penn State going into this one.
Yeah, and I like Penn State in this one too, and that's nothing against Utah. Utah is a super accomplished team. They obviously went out and won the Pac-12 and knocked USC out of the playoff. Cam Rising, the quarterback there, is a phenomenal player, and then Clark Phillips leading the defense. I believe finished with the most interceptions in college football, or at least had that at one point. I like Penn State here because it's a young, hungry team. Towards the end of the season, freshman quarterback Drew Aller got the call. They let him come up and finish the season. They finished with 4 wins. They've got Abdul Carter on the defensive side of the ball, and then a pair of 2 young running backs too, led by Nick Singleton. And this is going to be a lot of their first exposure to a big bowl game like this in the Rose Bowl. So I just think you're going to get their best. Utah came in with some big aspirations this season, and they finished strong, but I don't quite think that they probably are where they wanted to be. So I just don't think that you're going to see the same level of composure and passion in the Utah team as you will for Penn State.
I think this game too, for the fans out there, I think this is a big game for non-playoff bowl games. The Rose Bowl itself, especially with it still being a Pac-12 team and a Big Ten team, like there's a lot of pride still on the table. I think for both of these schools, especially their fan bases, especially for a school like Utah, who hasn't been in as many of them lately. Obviously last year, but um, just getting the chance to get over the hump, I think, for Utah and win one of these, and then eventually keep that rolling if they can. But Penn State, I think, will definitely be ready to play and make a statement because I think James Franklin too will be looking to posture as we go forward for both recruiting and himself to another school potentially.
Yeah, and we'll continue to see some of those recruits play out and see Penn State, a young team, continue to develop those stars that they have. I'm excited to see what they look like in 2 years. But with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up on our stream tonight. Jared, thanks for joining. I think we had some good discussion and we're able to get a good idea of what to look for in these games. Just to give you all a heads up, we didn't cover the playoff semifinal games. We're planning on doing that later, a little bit closer to those days, and we'll go a little bit more in depth on our analysis of those. But as far as new age sports, we're signing off here unless Jared has any parting shots.
Nope. Good to be here. It was fun.
All right. Thanks, everybody.